I'm going to read a bit more of Skellig tonight from chapter 10 onwards. I tried to stay awake that night, but it was hopeless. I was dreaming straight away. I dreamed that the baby was in the blackbird's nest in Mina's garden. The blackbird fed her on flies and spiders, and she got stronger and stronger until she flew out of the tree and over the rooftops and onto the garage roof. Mina sat on the back wall drawing her. When I went closer, Mina whispered, "Stay away, you're in danger." Then the baby was bawling in the room next door, and I woke up. I lay listening to Mum cooing and comforting, and the baby squeaking and hissing. The birds were singing outside. When the feed was over and I was sure everyone was asleep, I crept out of the bed, got my torch, pulled some clothes on and tiptoed past their room. I took a jar of aspirin from the bathroom. I went downstairs, opened the back door and tiptoed into the wilderness. The takeaway trays were down under newspapers and a heap of weeds. They tilted over and lots of the sauce had run out. When I looked inside, the char siu was all gluey and red and cold. I dropped the soggy spring rolls into the same tray and went down towards the garage. "You must be stupid," I told myself. "You must be going round the stupid bend." I looked up at the blackbird on the garage roof and saw how it opened its yellow beak, so wide as it sang. I saw the sheens of gold and blue where the early light shone on its black. I switched on the torch, took a deep breath and stepped inside. The scuttling and scratching started. Something skittered across my foot and I nearly dropped the food. I came to the tea chests and shone the torch behind.
"You again?"
he squeaked.
"Thought you'd gone away."
"I've brought something," I said. He opened his eyes and looked at me. "Aspirin," I said, "and number 27 and 53, spring rolls and pork char siu." He laughed, but he didn't smile.
"Not as stupid as you look,"
he squeaked. I held the takeaway tray across the tea chests towards him. He took it in his hand, but he started to wobble and I had to take it back again.
"No strength,"
he squeaked. I squeezed between the tea chests. I squatted down beside him. I held the tray up and shone the torch onto the food. He dipped his finger in. He licked his finger and groaned. He stuck his finger in again and hooked a long, slimy string of bean sprouts and sauce. He stuck his tongue out and licked. He slurped out pieces of pork and mushrooms. He shoved the spring rolls into his mouth. The red sauce trickled down from his lips, down over his chin and onto his black jacket.
"Oh,"
he said.
"ooh."
He sounded like he was loving it, or he was in pain, or both those things together. I held the tray close to his chin. He dipped and licked and groaned. His fingers were twisted and stunted. His knuckles were swollen.
"Put the aspirin in,"
he said. I put 2 aspirin in the sauce, and he picked them out and swallowed them. He belched and belched. His hand slipped to his side again. His head slumped back against the wall.
"Food of the gods,"
he whispered.
27 and 53.
I put the tray down on the floor beside him and shone the torch on him. There were hundreds of tiny creases and cracks all over his pale face. A few fine colourless hairs grew on his chin. The red sauce below his lips was like congealed blood. When he opened his eyes again, I saw the tiny red veins like a dark net across the whites of his eyes. There was a smell of dust, old clothes, dry sweat.
"Had a good look,"
he whispered. "Where are you from?"
"Nowhere."
"They'll clear all this out. What will you do?"
"Nothing,
"What will you—"
nothing, nothing and nothing."
He closed his eyes again.
"Leave the aspirin,"
he said. I took the top off and put the jar on the floor. I had to push aside a little heap of hard, furry balls. I held one up to the torchlight and saw it was made of tiny bones glued together with fur and skin.
"What are you looking at, eh?"
he said. I put it on the floor again. Nothing. The blackbird on the roof sang louder and louder. There's a doctor comes to see my sister, I said. I could bring him here to see you.
No doctors. Nobody.
Who are you?
Nobody.
What can I do?
Nothing.
My baby sister's very ill.
Babies.
Is there anything you can do for her?
Babies. Spittle, muck, spew and tears.
I sighed. It was hopeless. My name's Michael. I'm going now. Is there anything else I can bring you?
Nothing. 27 and 53.
He belched again. His breath stank. Not just the Chinese food, but the stench of the other dead things he ate. The blue bottles, the spiders. He made a gag noise in his throat and he leaned away from the wall like he was going to be sick. I put my hand beneath his shoulder to steady him. I felt something there, something held in by his jacket. He retched. I tried not to breathe, not to smell him. I reached across his back and felt something beneath his other shoulder as well, like thin arms folded up, springy and flexible. He retched, but he wasn't sick. He leaned back against the wall and I took my hand away. Who are you? I said. The blackbird sang and sang. I wouldn't tell anybody, I said. He lifted his hand and looked at it in the torchlight.
I'm nearly nobody,
he said.
Most of me is Arthur.
He laughed, but he didn't smile.
Arthur-itis,
he squeaked.
He's the one that's ruining me bones. Turns you to stone, then crumbles you away.
I touched his swollen knuckles. What's on your back? I said.
A jacket, then a bit of me, then lots and lots of Arthur.
I tried to slip my hand beneath his shoulder again.
No good.
He squeaked.
Nothing there's no good no more.
I'm going, I said. I'll keep them from clearing the place out. I'll bring you more. I won't bring Dr. Death. He licked the dry sauce from below his lips.
27 and 53,
he said.
27 and 53.
I left him, backed away towards the door and went out into the light. The blackbird flew away over the gardens, squawking. I tiptoed into the house. I stood for a minute at the baby's cot. I put my hands beneath the blankets and felt the rattling of her breath and how soft and warm she was. I felt how tender her bones were. Mum looked up at me and I could tell she was still asleep.
Hello,
she whispered. I tiptoed back to bed. When I slept, I dreamed that my bed was all twigs and leaves and feathers, just like a nest. Next morning, Dad said he could hardly move. He was all bent over. He said his back was killing him. He was stiff as a blinking board. Where's those aspirin? He yelled down the stairs. Mum laughed. All this exercise'll do him good, she said. It'll get that fat off him. He yelled again. I said, where those blooming aspirin? I kissed the baby and ran to catch the bus to school. That morning we had science with Rasputin. He showed us a poster of our ancestors, of the endless shape changing that had led to us. There were monkeys and apes, the long line of ape-like creatures in between, then us. It showed how we began to stand straighter, how we lost most of our hair, how we began to use tools, how our heads changed shape to hold our big brains. Coot whispered it was all a load of rubbish. His dad had told him there was no way that monkeys could turn into men. Just look at them, stands to reason. I asked Rasputin if we'd keep on changing shape and he said, who knows, Michael? Maybe evolution will go on forever. Maybe we'll go on changing forever.
Bollocks,
whispered Coot. We drew the skeleton of an ape and the skeleton of a man. I remembered what Mina had said and I looked really closely at the poster. I put my hand up and said, what are the shoulder blades for, sir? Rasputin crinkled his face up. He reached behind his back and felt his shoulder blades and smiled. I know what my mother used to tell me, he said, but to be honest, I haven't got a clue. Afterwards, Cute hunched his shoulders up and lowered his head and stuck his chin out. He lurched through the corridor, grunting and running at the girls. Lucy Carr started screaming. Stop it, you pig, she said. Cute just laughed. Pig, said Cute. I'm not a pig, I'm a gorilla. And he ran at her again. In the yard, when I played football, I realised how tired I was with being awake so much during the night. Leaky kept asking what was the matter with me. I was playing rubbish. Mrs. Dando came again when I was standing by myself at the side of the field. What's up? She said. Nothing. And how's the little one? Fine. I looked at the ground. Sometimes I think she stops breathing, I said. Then I look at her and she's fine. She will be fine, she said. You'll see. Babies so often bring worry with them into the world, but you'll be wrestling with her before you know where you are. She touched me on the shoulder. For a moment, I wondered about telling her about the man in the garage. Then I saw Leaky looking, so I shrugged her off and ran back, yelling, On me head! On me head! It was a dozy afternoon. Some easy maths, then Miss Clark's reading us another story, this time about Ulysses and his men trapped in the cave with the one-eyed monster Polyphemus. I was nearly asleep as she told us how they had escaped by pretending to be sheep. I took my skeleton picture home. I kept looking at it on the bus. There was an old bloke sitting beside me with a Jack Russell on his knee. He smelt of pee and pipe smoke. What's that? He said. Picture of what we used to look like long ago, I said. Can't say I remember that, he said, and I'm pretty ancient. He started going on about how he'd seen a monkey in a circus in his young days. They trained it to make tea, but it was nothing like a person, really. But maybe had just been practicing. There was spit dribbling at the side of his mouth. I could see he wasn't all there. There's a man in our garage, I said, when he'd shut up. Aye, he said. The Jack Russell yapped. He put his hand around its mouth. He seemed to be thinking hard. Aye, he said again, and there was the loveliest lass on the trapeze. You could swear she could nearly fly. Okay, that's your latest instalment of Skellig. I'll read some more soon. Hope you're all looking after each other. Be good to your adults. Bye.